You're watching the Chucktown Wind Report Tuesday night update for January the 5th. Let's talk about winds and weather for the next 48 hours as we're still seeing a cold Arctic northerly wedge down the coastline that has been bringing us this bitterly cold weather. Finally, winter is here, so sometimes that's the way it happens. It all comes at one time. So right now we have this very large dome of high pressure wedging down these northeasterly and northerly winds overnight and into tomorrow morning as well. So our temperatures last night got below freezing, but I think tonight will stick just above freezing along the immediate beaches and then probably right at or below freezing just inland. So we could be talking just inside the harbor and inland. Could be just a couple of degrees difference than what the beaches are showing. So the central pressure is 1,036 millibars for this high pressure, and the other surface maps are showing 1,038 to 1,039, so we know it's strengthened just a little bit. The bottom line, what it all means is that this high pressure is pretty large, and it's keeping the southeast region really dry. The dew points are very low in our area, so that means precipitation is very, very low chance precipitation to occur, even though we see some of this mid-level troughing just offshore with a little bit of precip mixed in with it. Mainly over the Gulf Stream is where that mix is going to occur, but as it moves into the coastline tonight, we could see a few clouds tonight and into tomorrow morning. Nothing to worry about. There's probably it's not going to be moist enough. They won't be saturated enough to do anything, so we're not looking at any kind of precip overnight. However, that could increase the gradient for our area tomorrow morning as we wake up with those northerly winds crank up again. We could see a northeast lean as the sun comes up, peeks through the clouds from time to time. We could see some of that land and sea interaction bend that wind northeast and actually turn on along the beaches higher than it was inside the harbor mouth and up towards the airport today. So we saw some mid to upper 20s in gusts up near the airport and even inside the harbor. And we could see some of those tomorrow along the beaches. So I'm going to call for about 15 to 19 knots inside the harbor. And as the winds lean more northeast and the beach centers at the Isle of Palms and Folly Beach pick up on these coastal leans, we could start to see 15 to 19 knots along the beaches there as well. So we're going to hold that mainly inside the harbor mouth to inland locales, but give it a medium confidence forecast for the beaches to turn on as well. And that should go through tomorrow. Now, as we get into Thursday, the center of high pressure is going to move out in the Atlantic a little bit. Now, one of two things could happen. Either we're going to keep this northeasterly flow wedging down the coastline, or we could get more of an easterly flow in off the ocean, where some of that mid-level troughing, some of that moisture, there's also some upper-level moisture coming up from the Gulf. Some of that can mix down, and we could see a stationary boundary or warm front hug in along the coastline for Thursday and increase our chances of rain. So we'll keep an eye on that. I don't think it's going to help the gradient. I think it's going to weaken the gradient where wind speeds will actually come down. So I'm going to call for about 13 to 17 knots on Thursday with potential for it to build a little bit more, a little less confidence on Thursday. So that's what we're looking at. If we look at GRA on radar, we can see on the infrared satellite, you see that mid-level troughing has made it into the coastline by now, but it's drying out as it makes it over land. And if we look at the water vapor imagery, we can see just how dry the air is over the entire state of South Carolina. So we have some moisture slowly making its way in from the west. That's going to be later into this weekend where we have a cold front possibly coming together. A little too early to tell just yet what's going to happen there. So if we look at our data scope from weather flow, you can see the gradient, where the gradient energy is over Florida. You can see 21 knots in Jacksonville, at Huguenot Park, Tampa Bay, and these areas are all 21 to 23 knots. Pretty much solid 21 to 23 and 24 knots all the way down into Key West. And then even up in the Outer Banks where there's a tightened gradient along the northwesterly lean up in that direction, we definitely see some higher numbers there too. That all is a lot closer to that warm water of the Gulf Stream, so that's creating a temperature gradient up there. Along our coastline, where we're a little bit more hugged in away from the Gulf Stream and the warmer waters, we tend to have to see more of a northeast flow in general to get those numbers to come up completely. So that's what we're looking at. But if we zoom into Charleston a little bit more, let's see what's going on right now. Our offshore buoys, we're showing the Charleston buoy showing 21 knots with 25 knot gusts. So that's out closer to the Gulf Stream where the warmer waters are. That's why the gradient is tighter out there and the winds are higher. So along our beaches, we're showing 8 to 10 knots on the immediate barrier islands where there's land shadowing going on. And then over here where the open waters are along the Fort Sumter Front Range, Light and James Island Yacht Club, 13, 14 knots. Temperature at Fort Sumter is 37.9 degrees. So it's bouncing around between 36 and 38 degrees right now. It's probably going to bottom out around 34, 35 tonight. And we'll go with that. But for tomorrow, in a nutshell, for a recap, we're talking 15 to 19 knots along areas more open to the cleaner fetch. So depending on which direction that wind leans, The more cleaner the flow on the beaches, the higher the numbers will be, but otherwise it'll be gustier inland with some spikes in the wind. And then as we get into Thursday, we see the numbers come down overall. We're talking 13 to 17 knots, and it could weaken even further than that on an easterly leaning. If the winds go east, it's all over. The winds are going to fall. But if it stays northeast or east-northeast, we'll keep a little bit of that northerly cut, and we'll have the higher numbers. And that will do it for the Chucktown Wind Report. Thanks for watching. I'll tune in tomorrow night when I come back on. Thank you.